Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project podcast, where transformation, self care, and healing meet real talk with a sprinkle of humor. I'm your co host, Eva Zobian Wolf, founder and CEO of Eva Z Wellness. I'm a mind body specialist, nurse, and adaptive yoga therapist who spent over 20 years in the medical world. So, when it comes to burnout, stress, and chronic pain, I've been there. And I help people get through it with tools like adaptive yoga, Reiki, and mindfulness practices. I'm not doing this alone. I am joined by my brilliant co host, Tina Eichenberg.
Hello, I am an energy healer and a self care coach, and I am certified in everything from the emotion code to laughter yoga. Yes, laughing counts as healing. I help people to ditch emotional baggage, clear limiting beliefs, and realize that healing doesn't have to be heavy, it can actually be kind of fun.
Together, we're diving into trauma informed and trauma sensitive approaches to healing. We'll break down complex topics into bite sized, doable tips with plenty of heart, real talk, and the occasional burst of laughter. Because, yes, healing is serious business, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the ride. Whether you're navigating emotional wounds, chronic stress, or just trying not to spiral all over the stuff that you can't control, we've got your back. Welcome to the journey. Let's get started. And maybe laugh a little too.
Perfect. All right, so what are we talking about today? Did you have a good week? We did chat on Monday,
We
but
did.
since the last podcast, it's been 2 weeks. How have you been?
Um, on an energy roller coaster, quite honestly. It's been a lot of up, down. Yesterday I was in bed by 6 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And just I was thinking, you know what? My body has been just telling me all day long, rest, rest, rest. And so I listened
Mm-hmm.
and I was in bed early and woke up feeling a lot better today.
Good. Awesome. I'm
Um,
so glad.
so how about yourself?
I became a grandmother in the
That's
last 2 weeks.
right.
I
Yes, that
did.
did happen in
Yes.
this 2 weeks. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah. So she was born April 19th. So it'll be 2 weeks on Saturday. Um, Beautiful little girl. Yes, she was born to our daughter
Congratulations.
and her wife. Um, she is our first, so she made us a yaya and an abab. And I'm sure people are wondering, abab? Like, how do you come up with the name abab? So, when my kids were, this was probably, gosh, this might have been almost 10 years ago. We were vacationing, and it got on the subject of what would we be called when we become grandparents. And I didn't want to be called something that would be considered what I thought as old. I grew up with a Grandma Winarski and a Grandma Schmidt. So they were both grandmas, just use their last name to figure out who was who. I didn't want to be a Nana or a Nanny or a Granny or a Gram. Um, and one of the kids said Yaya. And I was like, oh, I like that. And my oldest pointed out that it is the last two letters of my first name. And so the kids decided that if I was going to be Yaya, my husband was going to be Ob, because he goes by Rob. And it just kind of morphed into Abab.
Aw, that's
So,
so cool.
yeah, so I'm Yaya and he's Abab.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
love that. What's really cool with that is the kids were involved in the process of that.
Yes, and my husband does not care for it. He's like, the grandkids will call me whatever they want to call me, right? They will. However, we're all going to taint the well, right? You want to go see Abob? Look, there's Abob.
And the kids, and he is right to a certain extent because the kids are going to hear that and there's going to be a metamorphosis that
Right,
happens with that.
right, right. It could be Bob Bob.
Who know? I mean, one of my dear friends, when her first grandchild was trying to say grandma, or however it is,
Right.
however it was that he in his mind was thinking of her, it came out as Gaga. And so then that became her name, where
Right.
she was Gaga.
Yeah.
And so this is yeah, this is our topic for today, because we were talking about w- the different stages that happen while you're parenting and grandparent, whether you're the grandparent of, I have a grand cat, a grand puppy, and a grandson. And it wasn't until the grandson that the full grandparent names came into fruition, or started to evolve,
Right.
um, because for our family, we have, well, for my grandson, I should say, there's four sets of grandparents and three great grandparents that are still alive.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the grandparents had a very deep, passionate feeling about what she was going to be referred to. And she wanted Granny because she had had a granny. And
Right.
that was such a fantastic relationship for her, that
Yeah.
she said, that's what I want to be when I become a grandparent. So she said, I'm claiming Granny. And I was just like, I was just going to leave it up to the kid, and whatever he called me is whatever I became. But okay, sure, if we're picking out names.
Right.
um, and then I really sat with that one, and I could not figure out for a long time. And then after a while, I was like, I do want it to be slightly different. And I thought, you know what? I want to be Gamma. And when I said that, it was funny because my yoga mentor went, "Oh, you want to be Gamma as in gamma ray?" And I said,
That's what popped in my head too. I had
"Yes."
like Hulk pop in my head.
Exactly. And that was and
Yeah.
that was it. And it was funny because my husband said, "Now, you want to be gamma, not necessarily because of gamma ray, but because it's the gamma version of the Hulk." And I
Right.
went, "Yeah, exactly, exactly."
Yeah.
And so, part of that was, recognizing my journey as a person,
Hmm.
and then also having some fun with it. And so my husband wants to be Papa, and so he likes Papa John. That's his
Uh huh.
name. And uh, and then all the others kind of evolved into what they wanted. And so uh, it's only been in the last, he's now 3.5. It's only been in the last maybe 8-10 months that he's been able to say gamma.
Hmm.
He wasn't slow to speaking. He just was slow to um, connect with anybody that
Right.
wasn't mom and dad.
Right.
He's a very, very small bubble child. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, it happens when it happens.
Yep. Yeah. I think I don't remember what my kids called my in-laws. They're grandmom and granddad. And it's funny because they're grandmom and granddad to my kids, but to my niece and nephew, they're nana.
Mm.
So, and then my mom, my dad was Pop Pop. My mom started out as Nana, and my oldest gradually changed it to Nanny.
Mm.
So she became Nanny versus Nana. Um, but yeah, the grandkids they're going to connect with you when they connect with you. They're going to call you whatever they want to call you, but it is going to be a version of what they are taught, right? And if you keep correcting them, like I'm sure we kept correcting our kids for grandmom and granddad. There's no way that at 2 years old they were calling my in-laws grandmom and granddad. We just kept correcting them or introducing them every time. Oh, let's go to grandmom and granddad's. We didn't reiterate what they were saying. It's probably why I don't remember what they were called. But yeah, they're going to. That was one thing that. Did you have trouble with him not connecting to you sooner than the last 8 or 9 months?
It was just he was very shy. So when I would go to visit, and this is where it was really important, going into what we're talking about today, is being really mindful that not to overstep in
Right.
what was happening. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I really love that's happening in the world right now is teaching kids about they have a voice, that they're able to speak their minds, they're able to say what they want, what they're comfortable with and what they're
Right.
not comfortable with.
Right.
um, and so he is very affectionate and he does love to give hugs, but it's got to be on his timeline
Yeah.
when he feels comfortable. And so when I go to visit, he has been he was a COVID baby, right? And he was born
Yeah.
with mom and dad at home, and not as many not as many interactions with other people. And so, not to blame it, and I'm not to, in any way to say that they kept him from people. That's not what I'm saying, even remotely. It's just recognizing that
Right.
um, he needs time and space to warm up to people. And so, um, and also with the stage of development, his ability to recognize people that aren't in his everyday life, that memory takes a little while. So, I'd go to visit, and it would take a few days for him to warm up, and we'd still interact, but it would take a little, it would take time for him to go, okay, Gamma, come on, let's go do this.
Right.
We'd sit on the floor and we'd play together. Um, and it was, we while I was visiting, we developed our own little rhythm and routines. Um, and so, it's one of those fun things. And, we'd talk on the phone and we'd FaceTime and such. And he would just kind of sit there and be shy and quiet. And then, in the last 8 to 10 months or so now, when he gets on the phone and we're FaceTiming each other, he's like, Gamma, what you doing? Where's Papa? Where's Gamma? And he's like,
Right.
Gamma, what? And those are the fun things where they're starting to get old enough to have those memories already there and part of the process. And so
Right.
um, we're gonna spend about 2 weeks with them this summer, and so I'm really excited to have more FaceTime and play time and get more interaction with all of us together. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I'm glad that my daughter and granddaughter are only like 2 hours away. All of my kids are within a 2 hour drive, and so I hope it stays that way for forever. But being a military family, I know um, that isn't always possible, depending on where their jobs take them, where their future family takes them. Because when it comes to your kids getting married and starting to have kids, you now become the extended family, and you start this whole new chapter. So what the listeners probably don't know is that on the day that my daughter went into labor with our granddaughter, our son also moved out, and we became empty nesters. So it's a whole new ball game. Now, my twins are 25, and they are my youngest. So I have had adult children for like 8 years now, something like that. So I've had a little bit of practice in having a relationship with adult children, because it definitely is different than the relationship we have with our kids when they're in school. Even when they're in college, it's either they may be adults, but if they're in college, I think um, that relationship that you had with them when they were in high school still continues for at least a couple of years until they graduate from college and get a real get a job and really start to become adults. Did you find that to be when your kids moved on and became adults, did you see the same thing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When they were in college, they asked a few more questions. There were more interactions. There was more of a, um, I'm stepping out into the world, but I'm still like my toe, one foot's out and one foot's in.
Hmm.
But once college was done, then it was more of a I'm an adult, and we really tried to encourage our kids um, to take more of a leadership role in their own life. Meaning, if there's something that you want to do, go do it. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let the hard work stop you. Um, and one of the things that I kept telling the kids is that those 4 years of, well, 4 or 5 years of college, those are actually kind of magical years
Hmm.
where you have all of the benefits of being an adult without a lot of the responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so, go out and enjoy that time period. Go out and try new things, explore new areas, um, because the idea is you still have parents that are available as resources.
Hmm.
Um, but then, once you graduate from college and you're out on your own, yeah, we're still resources, but we've taken a much, much bigger step back.
Right.
And it's more of a, so in yoga, I talk about this where there's a difference between little y yoga and big Y yoga. Little y yoga is the practice that you do on the mat. It's the physical practice. It's the stuff that you see in social media, where it's the benefits that you feel physically. You increasing the flexibility, increasing the strength, um, and the big Y yoga is when you're really looking and you're branching out into all of the 8 limbs of yoga, and you're looking at how do I interact with people? How do I interact with myself? What are the practices that I'm doing to really deepen my relationship with myself and to have a deeper knowing of who I am, and paying attention to, is this in alignment with my purpose, my
Right.
passions, my desires, or is this something that I'm doing and it's an obligation to somebody else and not necessarily to me? And we talked about this a little bit the other day, that parenting, you have this big P parent where, the kids are children, and your role is to you're responsible for everything from food and shelter and clothing to education and love and support and providing experiences and lessons and feedback. But then as they get older, that P starts to become smaller and smaller and smaller,
Yeah.
to where now you're the small P parent. And, when they move out, especially when they get into a relationship with somebody else, we go from being immediate family to extended family.
Yeah. And there are so many people who are not okay with that. More so mothers than fathers that are not okay with that. Um, I can remember my own mom not being okay with that when my brother had kids. I don't know if it was so much when I had kids because I think I relied on her a lot more because I was so much younger when I started having kids. But when my brother started having kids, he was in his 30s. I think he was in his 30s. Um, and of course, he had a different wife than the husband that I had. But they were very um, they were a lot more, I think, more protective when it came to people coming over and germs and stuff like that. And so, you know, my mom wasn't invited over often enough for her, and she had a really hard time with that because it was her grandchild. It was her baby's baby, and I took a lot of lessons from that. I started reading this book called Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child, and this was so that I could look at the relationships between my siblings and my parent, or all of us kids and my parents, so I could kind of try to see both sides without having to ask questions of either parties. Um, and what that book did was it also gave me insight as to like how to have conversations and how to have a relationship with my own adult children when they start having kids. Because when your when your babies start having babies, it really does change the relationship. It does. I don't care what anybody says. It's going to change the relationship. My relationship with my daughter is now she's a mom, and I don't. I can focus on her, but that is where my focus, as far as I can love my grandbaby, I can have fun with my grandbaby. But when it comes to raising my grandbaby, that's not my job. That's her
Absolutely.
job and her wife's
Absolutely.
job. I'm here for advice if they want advice on something, but it is not my place to offer advice.
And this is a very challenging place for people to recognize that shift in relationship. And these are some really important topics, so going back to trauma informed and trauma sensitive. Um, Something that I heard once that is incredibly powerful, and a lot of people are gonna fight me on this, and I'm gonna ask them to really take the time to explore why this is the hill that they want to stand on. Um, Unsolicited advice is a form of abuse.
It is, and I have to admit that I do it. It is something that I am have become so aware of myself because I do it. I do it. I used to do it a lot, and I still have to. I'm still changing those patterns, those neural pathways to say, to ask, can I give you some advice on that?
Or would you be
And
open to advice? Or
right,
would you like
right,
advice?
yeah, and so I haven't had anybody say no yet, but it could also be that they're afraid to say no.
And that's an important distinction, because we are not a society that asks, would you like an assistance on this?
Right,
Instead, we are very free to say, okay, let me tell you what you need to do.
right,
And it's
yeah,
usually in that, very, very specific wording. You need to do this,
yeah.
or I can't believe you did this. Um, and this is a very this can be a very triggering topic, because this is not the world that we lived in.
No, no, we were even even as an adult, our parents would often give us advice and unsolicited and um, yeah, it is, and it is such a hard thing to get away from, especially when you see someone is hurting so much and you're not used to asking, can I give you some advice? And it just, even this past weekend I was having a conversation with somebody and it just kept coming out and I couldn't stop it. It'd come out and I'd be like, shoot.
But the thing is when you see that happening, when you, because again, like, this is a challenge for me as well too. All of us, this is not the way that we were raised. This is
Right.
not the environment that we were in for a long time. And so having that, one, developing that awareness that it's happening, that's the first step. That's how we create those new pathways in the brain.
Yeah.
And then from there, look at the person and say, oh, okay, my bad. Let me rephrase that. and switch that around, or can I get a do-over on that?
Yeah.
However it is that it feels comfortable for you to admit, hey, I shouldn't have said that. Let me rephrase that differently.
Yeah.
um, because again, coming back to yoga, there's a principle of non-stealing, and this is our interactions with other people. And this is can be extrapolated out in a lot of different ways. From, do I have a tendency to show up to my appointments or my meetings with people 10 minutes late? Well, if I do that on a regular basis, that's me stealing time from people.
Yeah.
The same thing if I'm teaching a yoga class. If I teach the class and I say, "Oh, I'm going to give you the gift of 5 or 10 minutes extra, and I'm going to go longer on shavasana," well, I didn't give them a gift. I stole 10 minutes from them, because what if they had an appointment
Right.
and they needed to leave class on time, and they
Right.
planned their day with, "I'm leaving class at this time."
Yeah.
So I didn't ask for that permission. And so this is a very similar thing, that when we give advice without asking, that is, we are basically looking the person in the eye and saying, "I don't trust you to make your own decisions and that you'll know what to do for yourself. I know much better than you do
Yeah.
how you should handle this situation."
Yeah.
That's a power over instead of a power with move.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
To quote
learning.
Brene
I'm
Brown.
learning. It's actually easier for me not to try and offer my kids unsolicited advice versus offering friends unsolicited advice, because I look up to my in-laws in that sense, because my in-laws never gave us unsolicited advice. They always asked if there was something they could do to help, or could they offer a different way. Um, and my husband and I I've always told him, I really want to just model your parents, like in how they helped us when we were struggling or with life, how they treated our grandchildren. Just I love how they did that. But I never saw them really interact with people outside of the family. I didn't see them interacting at work. And so I know that that's how they were at work as well, because how you are with your family, there's a sense of that with other people. Maybe not the whole thing, because usually you're more comfortable with your family, and so you'll do things with your family that you wouldn't do at work. But like, if they're acting this way with their family, you can only imagine how they are with strangers and coworkers. And so I've taken a lot of their lessons that they unknowingly taught me in in communicating with my kids, even with my parents, with my siblings. Um, it's with my friends that I really need to shift some things with, as far as like giving unsolicited advice, and that is something I'm very aware of, and on a conscious level am addressing. However, when our kids when we get back to having relationships with our kids when they're not only adults, but they become our extended family, you really have to, if you want to, and this is not, um, and this is probably a very unpopular opinion as well. For me, it is um, what's the word I'm looking for? When we're accepted, it's not our children's obligation to have us in their life.
Mm, that is a very important distinction.
Right? It is not their obligation to accept us into their life. Our job as parents is to raise them to be productive adults of society, right? To be kind, to be compassionate, to be generous on some levels, but not all. But it's to give them the tools so that they can fly the nest and and have their own families, and eventually become grandparents themselves, and just carry on that lineage. It is not, there is no obligation there to them to keep us in their lives. They didn't ask to be born, in a sense,
And
right?
this is, yeah, absolutely. Um, actually in Vedic astrology and a lot of that, they did actually choose to be born at that particular
Yeah,
time, and they chose us.
right. That's what I
Um,
meant by they didn't really, but on the conscious level,
yes, absolutely,
right? They didn't
absolutely.
choose. They didn't choose to come into this life. They didn't. We chose to have children as
Right.
as a human.
Absolutely. And the thing is that, and I totally agree with what you're saying, because part of their role and responsibility as an adult for their own mental health, for their own mental, spiritual, emotional health, their role is also to establish healthy boundaries.
Hmm.
And I think I talked to you about this the other day, where I said, our daughter is graduating from school next May, and the school where she is graduating from is in a very small town in West Virginia, and there's one hotel, and the whole area is very, very rural. And so when we had talked to her and her boyfriend the night before, they had talked about getting a large Airbnb and all of us converging together in that large Airbnb to, eat meals and spend time together. Because again, it's a small town, so there's
Right.
only, I think, like 3 or 4 restaurants, and everybody is going to be looking for spaces to eat out. And the nearest large city is about an hour away.
Wow.
And so she had said, yeah, we'll get the Airbnb, and then whoever wants to stay can stay. And then, probably about an hour later, she had texted and said, just kidding, we're going to get a small studio in town. Everybody is on their own to find their own place to stay. And I thought, wow, I'm so proud of her for saying that. Because at first, I was like, wow, she's going to take on that responsibility. Not only is she having to do her 4th year in another state where she's doing a lot of rotations, and she's having to set that schedule of rotations and then travel back to West Virginia for the graduation and all the things that are
Right.
involved in that. I'm like, that's a lot for her to take on. And so when she texted and said, just kidding, everybody's on their own. And so immediately I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, well, let me look up Airbnbs. And again, it's a small area. There's very limited
Right.
places to choose from. And one of the things that I did for myself is, okay, I'm just going to take a breath. I'm going to wait and talk with the other kids, see what they and their partners want to do. And then I'll look at a space and reserve it tomorrow, which, gave me some time to breathe, gave my
Right.
nervous system time to get grounded and not be so twirly and make a
Right.
decision just because that's the one that's the one that's available.
Right.
Um, and so what we ended up doing is texting uh, my son and his wife and saying, okay, we've got a pet friendly, kid friendly house that we're renting. If you're coming to the graduation and if you want to stay with us, there is space for you there. And then I sent them pictures of the one that I picked out, and they're like, oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, in the fact that there's a kitchen,
Right.
that all of us can make meals and sit and have fun together. Um, that's gonna be good. But I was so proud of my daughter for putting that boundary there and saying, okay, I did say that we were gonna do this, but I changed my mind.
Right. Yeah.
And so she has a space. She and her boyfriend have a space that they can be by themselves when she needs to decompress,
Right.
and then she has a space to hang out with us when she wants to.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about boundaries with your adult children, setting up boundaries. When my daughter was pregnant, we had asked, what are your plans with the hospital? because we weren't sure, because they're a very private couple. They're very introverted, and so I did not want to ask them to do something they weren't comfortable with. And one of the things that they did not or were not going to do is they were not going to have anybody come to the hospital after she was born. They weren't even sure if they were going to let anybody know that they were going to the hospital. And that really kind of hit a nerve with me.
Say more.
Because my baby's having a baby. I want to be there because that's what I've been told I'm allowed to do. Right? And so it took me some time to really be okay. I mean, it took me a lot longer than I thought it would to really just kind of be okay with it. And it didn't help that I had a number of people saying, but how can you do that? How can you let her not allow you to come to the hospital? And I was like, well, it's not like
So
I don't
you're the
want to
victim in the
go.
scenario here.
Right. It's not like I don't want to be there, but it's I'm not the one who's having the baby.
Bingo.
Of course I want to be there. Of course I'm a little hurt. My mama ego's a little hurt that I'm not being asked to be there. But
And the thing is that the responsibility of your daughter to assuage your mama ego?
no. No, it's not. Absolutely not.
Because that's a you issue, not
Exactly,
your
exactly.
daughter issue.
And I kept putting it back on myself because I wasn't going to I I didn't even want her to know that it hurt my feelings that she didn't want us there. That my daughter-in-law didn't want her parents there. I didn't even want her to know that. I don't even know if she knows that. And if she's watching this, ignore it. Ignore it, babe.
And here's again, your feelings are valid, so it is okay for you to say
Yes, it is.
that my feelings were hurt, but that's my issue, not
Right,
yours.
right. And that's what so yes, absolutely. I am allowed to do that. However, I know that the generational patterns that have gone on in my family, I know that if I said that to her, what the way that my story was going in my head was that even though I would say that it hurts my feelings that you don't want us to be there, but that's not your problem, it's mine, she still may take it on as her problem.
And okay, and so this is where being a trauma informed yoga therapist, where this is a lot of the distinctions that this is a great place for us to unpack a few things. So, okay, your feelings are valid,
Mm-hmm.
and it is completely okay for you to say, my feelings are hurt. However, my feelings are hurt on my end, and that's something for me to have to process and
Right.
digest and figure out how to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Not sharing that with your daughter and saying, hey, I don't want you to feel bad when I say this. That's not the reason that I say this. I want you to recognize that when I wanted to be there and I was hurt because I wasn't invited to be there, that's something for me to process. I don't want you to change who you are and not speak your mind because you're afraid of how I'm going to receive it. But okay, I want to take that but out. Um, uh, I also want to be able to be honest with you without you feeling that you need to change or how you create your boundaries. And part of that is being honest and open and saying, I am a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I am evolving.
Right.
And the best way for me to be able to do that is to be honest about my own experience. And should she say, "Wow, I didn't even realize that made you feel that way. Thank you, thank you for sharing that with me, Mom." Or, you know, and again, whatever decision you make,
Mm-hmm.
Kenya, is the right one for you on
Right.
how you want to share that with her. And if
Right.
she is watching and listening to this, then, hey, yay, because somebody's listening to us.
Right.
Um, and B, she's hearing that there was thought and there's a work involved in how you process that,
Yeah.
because as we've talked about this in a lot of different scenarios, we are working on evolving who we are and how we respond to things. We don't always get it right.
Right. No.
um,
No, we don't. No, because there's always going to be um, there's always going to be triggers or bumps in the road that are going to trip us up and go, oh, I thought I was over that. I thought I could get through that. And what this taught me was there is still growth for me to do in sharing how I feel with certain people.
Absolutely. Because again, one of the things that you and I have both done is looked at the way in which our parents interacted with us, decided how that affected us, and what we wanted to be, which areas that they showed us did we want to be like them, and which areas did they show us where we went, no, I that's definitely
Right.
not how I want to be.
Yeah.
um, and my mom and I don't even talk, well, I should say we talk rarely, because there were so many boundaries that got massively overstepped.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she languaged things had absolutely nothing to do with wanting to bring us together.
Right.
It was, I'm going to tell you exactly what you're doing wrong and how that's impacting, how your horrible decisions are impacting me.
Right.
And
Right.
that's not the way I want to interact with my kids. When they make decisions, they're making decisions on their own in their own life. And when they're raising their kids the way that they feel
Mm-hmm.
is best for them.
Right. They're doing the same thing that we did. They're taking what parts of us that they want to keep and they're changing what parts of us they didn't like. And we we have to be okay with that. If we want to honest, I mean, there it's not like they're, this is a very big conversation because a lot of people a lot of people are going to think that um gosh, there's parts of me that look at the thumbs up. There's parts of me that my kids don't like.
Yeah,
It's gonna that can be very hurtful to think that there's parts of me my kids don't like, that they're gonna change how they raise their kids based off of how I raise them. Absolutely. And unless they are putting their kids in harm's way, shut the fuck up, mom.
true. Yes,
shut
yes.
shut the fuck up, dad. Unless they are hurting those children, unless they are being abusive either emotionally, mentally, or physically, shut up. Let them raise their kids.
Yeah,
If they end up raising complete brats that are spoiled, who cares? That's on them. They're the ones who are going to have to deal with it. Not Gamma and Rob, not Yaya.
exactly, exactly. And and I still remember, my parents had my oldest son for a few hours, and I came home and he was just running amok. And I'm like, oh my God, it's almost like this kid was just fed a bag full of sugar. My dad goes, no, not sugar. And I hear my mom go, yeah, it was sugar coated gummy worms. And I'm going, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But my dad was so excited to be able to share in something that he never had as a kid. He was so excited to share. And I was just like, okay, we'll suffer through the sugar induced hyperactivity. You know, grandpa got to enjoy an event. And my husband, the thing that he really wants to be able to do with our grandkids is to walk down to the local diner and have pancakes with the kids on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, this is a very, very different dynamic. My dad grew up in uh, war starved Czechoslovakia post World War II, where they didn't have a lot of niceties.
Right.
My husband grew up in rural Michigan in the 70s. That's a very different dynamic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what they envision as their role with their grandchildren is very different. And, me, I'm like, I want to get down on the floor and I want to play with blocks and toys and, you know, read books and
Mm-hmm.
do science experiments. Those are the things that, go to the beach, go on walks, go
Right.
for bike rides. Those are the things that I'm looking forward to with my grandkids. Because my parents didn't do stuff like that with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to be, let's, let's get on the floor and do yoga. Let's have fun. Let's roll
Right.
around. Let's do all of the things. And so every single person has a different idea of what they would like their relationship with their grandkids to be. Part of my role is, okay, they live right now. The only grandchild that I have that will get out on the floor and play with me is the grandchild and the grandpuppy. The grandcat still just kind of like, looks at me and then kind of thumbs his nose at me and
Right.
walks away. Um, very, very, very stubborn with his
Yeah.
affection. Um, but the grand, and it's funny because I walk in and I get like jumping up and down from the grand dog. She's like, "Gamma's here,
Yeah.
Gamma's here," and the kid's just looking at me, going, "Why is Penny so excited to see you?" Someday maybe it'll be both of them. I don't know.
Right.
But my role is to go over there, have fun, and also maintain the boundaries and the rules that his parents have established. So if I'm going to feed that kid gummy worms, then I'm going to do it earlier in the day because
Right. Right. Or
they're going to
ask.
yeah, and I'm
Or
going to
ask,
ask.
hey, can he have some gummy worms? Yes, great. How many can he have?
Oh, there's a great distinction too.
You
And
know.
they'll, my daughter-in-law and my son are gonna laugh because they're gonna be like, "Oh, we know that they're organic, probably juice flavored
Right.
gummy worms," and so they're gonna, they're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever."
Yeah.
Um, in all of this, and then that's a distinction. I don't just buy presents and send presents to them. I will text and say, "Hey, I'm buying this. Does this sound okay?" Or what does he want for Christmas? What does he
Yes.
need for Christmas?
Right.
And they'll send me pictures and say, this would be really great for him to have. All right, cool.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
they
I
know
had
what he
my I
wants,
had
they
my
know what he
kids do
enjoys.
an Amazon list for Christmas because I gift giving is I love getting gifts. I love giving gifts. But I am the type of person that if you give me a gift that I'm not going to be able to use, it's going to be put in a closet or it's going to be given away because I don't like to collect a lot of stuff.
And this has been a really cool thing, and I'm trying to figure out how to extrapolate this out to the grandkids. So when the last child moved off to college, we downsized significantly. We went from a 2,500 square foot house to a 1,000 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we had, we put into storage and said, okay, if we need this and we use it in the next year, then we keep it. And if we
Right.
don't, then it's getting moved away. It's getting disposed of or recycled or donated, whatever. And so the kids started doing this where when we met up with them, they would take us out for a meal or they
Mm-hmm.
would take us out for a drink. My daughter started doing this, that when she came home from college, she's like, can a broke ass college student take you out for a beer? And I was like, absolutely. I'll let you buy the first round, and then after that, it's on me.
Right.
And she's like, perfect. She's like, having, you and I being able to sit down, have fun, and I'm paying for one of your drinks. She's like, that's what I can afford, and that makes me feel
Right.
feel good. Like she got something out of it too.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to try to figure out, yeah, where to put this or where to put that. And then our son, when we would go visit him before he got married, um, he's like, hey, can I, combine Mother's Day and Father's Day and take you both out to dinner? And he would pay for our dinner, or, different things like that. Or one of the big things with my husband is he really likes whiskey. And so he said, I want to take dad here. And there's a bar that has a lot of different whiskeys, and he and I get a shot together. And I'm like, well, yeah, have fun, right? So these were moments that they really wanted to do, and
Yeah.
it was a way for them to buy
Connect.
a gift, do a gift without having to
Yeah.
physically say, "Hey, I got you this tchotchke
Right.
that you're not going to want to put up anywhere."
Yep.
And so, yeah, and with kids, with grandchildren, now it's okay, what do I think you would find entertaining? What do I think that you would enjoy?
Yeah.
May be very different from what you actually like.
Yep. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with asking, what do you like? What do you have a list? Like I said, I have my kids do Amazon lists for Christmas because I want to buy them things that they are going to use. Now, I do still buy a gift or two that I think they would like. But for the most part, it's what do you want? You know,
Yeah.
I love gift giving, but I want you to use my gifts too. I don't want you to just put them in a closet or in 3 months give them away.
Oh my gosh. As a kid, I that was a fantastic way for people to let me know they had no idea who I was as a person,
Right.
because they would give me a gift and I would just look at, and this, again, like this is coming from my parents or
Yeah,
from my
yeah, it happens
grandmother.
now. Yeah, it's like I would rather you not give me anything. And yeah, take me out for a drink, give me a gift card for a restaurant to go out to dinner, you know. But you don't have to buy me gifts just to buy me gifts.
And that was one thing that we started doing as the kids got older, is our Christmas presents got smaller and more meaningful. And so we would get each of the kids maybe a couple small presents,
Mhm.
and then we would do a big family gift.
Yeah.
And especially when we had two of them that were, one was in the Navy and one was in college and one was at home. We'd do small gifts, and then we would do a big family gift, and that big family gift would be something that we would all do together.
That's what
And
we do as well. Yep. Yeah, we do a family day where we go and do something, and then they get some gifts under the tree for Christmas morning or whenever we see them. But I do just because cards. So throughout the year, I'll send them a just because card. Sometimes it's got a gift card in it. I might Venmo them $20 for lunch just um, because I love giving gifts. And you know me and Christmas. Christmas is a big deal for me. So they do get quite a few gifts for Christmas. I do have a Christmas budget for each of them that is probably more extensive than it needs to be. But that's because that's my love language. Like giving gifts at Christmas is one of my love languages. Um, but when it comes to the grandbaby, I will definitely be passing the gift list along because like girl does not need any clothes for the next year. Like I am not buying her any clothes. I don't She probably doesn't even need. We're just going to start a 529 savings account and just put the money in
that's
that.
right. And that is such a thing. That is such an amazing concept that I think a lot of people forget about. Is there are so many different ways to provide gifts,
Hmm.
and the receiving doesn't necessarily have to happen in that moment.
Right, right. Yeah, and when the kid gets older, gets to be like 6, 7, they're in school and they hear all the other kids are getting gifts. It's a little bit different. Then we'll get them more gifts and I don't want to say play that game, but we'll play that game. We'll give a few more gifts than we did when they were between the ages of newborn and 5 years old. Um, but because who wants to get a savings bond for their birthday?
Some kids, they do
Not many.
actually enjoy they do actually enjoy that. I had an uncle that apparently was a big gambler, and I didn't recognize that at the time. I just thought he was my cool Uncle Al. Um, he would always give us silver dollars because he went to Vegas all the time. And
Hmm.
he'd come over and he'd give us silver dollars. And I thought, this is just the coolest thing ever.
Right.
It just depends on how the way that it's given
Yeah.
as well too.
Yeah.
And so, like he made a big production of it. He was always laughing and having
Pull
fun.
it from
And
from behind your ear.
yeah, I mean, he was silly and it was hilarious. And there was nobody else that would give us silver dollars. And it was like a given every single time we saw him. We were going to get at least one silver dollar from him. And I thought,
Yeah.
you know what? $1, even back then, wasn't a big deal, but there was an energy behind it. There was a memory with it that every time I see a silver dollar now, I think of Uncle Al.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, there's lots of ways to make connections
There is.
with with our kids, with our grandkids. Um, I think that the time is probably one of the biggest, most valuable assets that we have, and being present in that moment to where we're seeing the kid
Hmm.
as exactly who they are is going to be far more valuable than any present that we can buy them. So, and I see this again through the process of having received so many gifts that had absolutely nothing to do with me. Like there was no thought into who I was as a person put into it. Um, Spending time, if your kid, your grandchild loves to cook,
Cook
okay,
with
then
them.
buy them something where they can cook, or you can cook a meal with them. If they love to read, buying books that they like to read, or giving them gift cards to the local bookstore in
Right.
their neighborhood. Finding ways that are just what is something they're really into, and if you have no idea what would be a good present for them, hey, what are some things that you'd like to have? You got this hobby here. What are things that you need for this hobby?
Right.
And that involves having a conversation that has nothing to do with us and everything to do with them.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's an area where a lot of us older adults we need to get off our freaking ego,
Yeah.
and step away from our ego, that it's not about us.
It's not. At this point, no. It is the only time it is about us is on our birthday and sometimes with our spouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to
Absolutely.
our kids, it's not what they're going through is not it's not about us. It might be, I mean, that again, that can go into another deeper conversation and we're running out of time, but yeah, when it comes time to when you become a grandparent or when your children leave the nest and they are adults and they are forging their own lives, you have to let them forage. You have to let them grow. And that may mean that for a period of time, you don't hear from them very often. And how can you be okay with that?
And the thing is that you can still text, you can still call, you can. I send little messages and
Yep.
memes to my kids all the time.
Yep.
Hey, hope you're having a great day. Love you.
Yep.
And they may respond and they may not respond because they're out living their own life.
Right. I would love to continue this conversation on the next episode, going into how do you foster a relationship with your adult children. Because again, I think we have a little bit different perspectives because you've been an empty nester longer than I have. But I think there's going to be a lot of similarities as well. But I would love to be able to give the listeners tips on how can you continue to build a relationship with your children when they're not children anymore, legally.
That's a big distinction right there.
Because they're always your children.
They're always your children,
But
they
you
may
can't
not
always treat
necessarily
them
be a child.
like they're little children.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they don't, and you touched on this quite a bit. They don't owe you a relationship.
No, they don't. Yeah. So if you guys are watching, join us in 2 weeks and we will continue this conversation with your kids don't owe you shit.
Ooh, okay. Your kids don't owe you shit. I don't hold that. That in itself is going to ruffle some feathers.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Take care.